to be in the house of God on this Sabbath afternoon. And we have a very special program. We have representatives from our local police force that are with us. We're going to be talking about safety, very important subject, especially in today's society. And I'd like to introduce the folks who are here. This is Lieutenant Steve Card. He's the man in charge right now. We have Officer Daniel Guzman and Officer Trinity Caraway. And the three of them will be blessing us. They will answer questions later on if we have any. So it's going to be a real good experience here. And at this point, I'm going to ask our able pastor to open with prayer.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Let us bow our heads and pray to the Lord. Dear Father in heaven, thank you so much, Lord, for this wonderful day that you are giving us. We had such a blessed program this morning with a baptism and with so many special moments. And we thank you so much that you have blessed our church today, giving us the honor of having Fresno Police Department represented with these officers, Lieutenant Steve, Officer Danny Guzman, and Trinity. We just thank you so much for their service to this community. We feel safer when they are close, when they are around, and we are so delighted that they will be able to share this afternoon crime prevention tips, help us to learn, and help us to practice what we learn. Bless them, protect them, guide them in their ways, Lord. May you send your angels always to protect them and protect all of the police force here in Fresno. We pray that you may bless our neighborhood, that you may send powers from heaven to bring peace and to also free us from crime. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
All right. Thank you, Pastor. Hello, my name is Steve Card, and I wanted to just introduce myself. It's really a joy to be here with you all. I had an opportunity to meet Pastor Govea and a few other members of the congregation here in the cafeteria, and I was expressing to him what I'd like to share with you, which is the faith community. You know, you folks are a wonderful group to build relationships with, and I've had the good fortune, the opportunity to serve in public safety for over 34 years, and that's not a boast. I just feel that it's a calling and it's a privilege to serve the community in the capacity which I find myself in and have worked in. I really believe in the mission of public safety. Our goal is to bring peace into the community wherever we serve and to serve others. And that's why I love the faith community, working with you all, getting to know you, because I'm sure you can relate that everything comes down to relationships. You know, if you get to know me on a personal level, you know me by first name, you see that I'm a member of this community as you are. I live in this community, raise a family here, I care, I'm invested. And the faith community is so special to me because in my experience, there is no better champion of peace in the community than people of faith who recognize, you know, the beautiful value of human life, the sanctity of human life, and the desire to promote peace and to you know, protect those that are vulnerable. So I feel very strongly and very convicted about the mission that we serve in law enforcement in a variety of capacities, you know, from our frontline police officers to all of our other support persons that serve for the Fresno Police Department. So I just want you to know, from me to you, you know, I care about you. I thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers, and we really feel it at the police department. You know, when people support us, and we know that there's, despite some of the negativity and we know we live in a world that's full of negativity and hostility. It's everywhere all the time, but we know, you know, we know the landscape, and we understand that we have people support, and we want to serve and help. Is really what we want to do. We want to, bring justice and peace to every situation that we can, where we can, within the confines of the law, following the rules, and doing it as a professional, with honor, and bringing honor to the profession. So with that, I will pass it over to Officer Guzman, who's going to share with you some safety tips, some things to look for. I know that you have an upcoming training, which is valuable. To me, any amount of training, like you, I'm a lifelong learner. I can always, I try to stay humble and always try to learn every day, And anything that we can learn here to open our consciousness, our mindset about awareness or little things that we can do, that's critical. So take this opportunity to ask questions. So I'm really thankful to have Officer Guzman here, Trinity here. They're both fantastic, Trinity brings a smile every day to work and hard work, and Danny, same as well. He's a great ambassador for the police department for the Central District. And on that note, I'll tell you that where I serve, I'm the operations commander, so I'm in charge of the day-to-day operations of the Central Policing District. So our boundaries that we serve the whole city, but specifically we focus on the southern boundary would be Belmont. The northern boundary of our geographic area is Ashland. We go west out to the 99 freeway, and we come east out to First Avenue. So we have that center section of the city that we're focusing our operations on daily. So my job is to make sure those operations are carried out, with the resources that we have. So I'm the number 2 in the police district. The number 1 in charge of the district is the captain, Captain Horsford. Wish she could be here today. She wishes she could be here, but she's traveling, unable to attend. But she wants me to tell you, thank you for your support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Officer Guzman.
Thank you, Lieutenant. It just seems like it was an hour ago I was just talking to everybody. So a little bit about me. I'm a 14-year Navy veteran. So at a young age, I committed myself to our country. Moved here in 2008 because I was stationed out here at one time. And I was starting up from zero. I lived in an apartment with my 2 boys. I didn't follow some of the tips I'm going to give you guys. And on Thanksgiving, I went to go visit my sister. I told my sons, I'll be right back. They went to go visit their mom. Within that hour, we came back to an empty apartment. That didn't hurt me so much. It was just the fact that I had a newborn son and they took his diapers. That was probably the one part that I was really just a little more disappointed with our community, but it also taught me a good, valuable lesson is that it wouldn't have happened if I just took some precautions and just followed these steps. Because, I know what it's like when I get that call or we respond to that call of someone losing everything. So I've been there, and I just would not want to see that happen to anybody else. So for me, we had all the crime prevention specialists come out to our district. Our lieutenant here, we came up with a very streamlined program of just making sure that you lock all your doors, all your windows, keeping everything secured, not having any valuables from walking distance. So we say don't show off what you have inside to everybody else because it just makes you a target. It's really just keeping, that humbleness a little bit of not showing off everything. And it just keeps you a little more secure. That person's not going to have another instant to want to look back into your place if there's nothing to look at. The other thing as well is you just want to make sure, especially in some of our older neighborhoods, there's not many traffic lights. So how do you counter that? Because that's where people want to come by and do things. You want to have your porch lights on. You want to talk to your neighbors about having their porch lights on because in one way, light is a deterrent that will keep people away most times. You also want to protect yourself with having cameras because sometimes it's just easier to make sure that while it's not going to deter the crime because it's still going to happen, at least you can now identify that person and then say, here's the footage of that person that did this to me, and here you go. And with having lighting, it helps because sometimes just having a camera, you get that silhouette of a person, and you're like, here, this is what I've got. And it's not like the movies where we can just say, okay, now that I have this, I'm going to get this nice fancy laptop. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to type this code in, and boom, enhancement. We got this person. It doesn't work like that. If you can't see that person, we can't see that person. If that video is blurry, it's going to stay blurry for us as well. So really just make sure you have good lighting, check your cameras at night, and do a test. You yourself stand out there with your camera and record yourself doing anything. Then play it back on your phone or your computer, and then you'll be able to say, wow, would I even be able to recognize myself if I was doing something? And then take a look and say, okay, maybe we need a different camera, or maybe we need better lighting. So those are just some little quick tips on house safety with the footage. You just want to make sure all your windows are left locked. Sometimes in this hot weather, some people have those swamp coolers. You want to have it left open just to let the exhaust out. Just remember, before you leave your house, just lock everything up. The last thing you want to do is say, you know what, no one's going to take nothing this time, and then you come back and then you have so many things gone, or just the fact that they went in there is a violation to a lot of people, just knowing that someone was in your house. And just so you guys know, it's not always just valuable things. Sometimes people will just come up and take a hose. They'll take a sprinkler. I mean, it's just, we have no idea why some of the things are done, but, you know, it's just protect yourself. Sometimes, you know, don't have your bushes this high where you can't even see behind it, because you know what? They're not going to see you, you're not going to see them. So if someone's hiding behind a bush that you love and that's your favorite bush and you've been growing it for 20 years, that person now has a place to hide. They could be hiding either from us, or they could be hiding from somebody else, but either way, they don't want to be caught. So how do you see them if you're just walking out yourself? So you really want to just keep your areas in front of your house, your windows, you want to have those clear of obstacles. You just want to be able to make sure that you're able to see out just as well. And then also, if you have cameras, you're able to use them for yourself to say, let me see if there's anybody outside before I go outside. With the holidays coming up, please make sure you're not on your phone. I know it's easy to say, hey, I just got that new shirt, that new dress, and you're on your phone walking to your car. You're going to make yourself a target. You don't want to be on your phone distracted, not paying attention, especially at the malls. You want to make sure, save that call or text until you get to your car, or even when you get home, because the last thing we want to see is you guys also be a victim to that. We see a lot of people just not paying attention, and they're walking with their heads down, and then someone comes up behind them, they take their stuff. Got just a couple more things, and then I'm going to let Miss Trinity finish that up. Fresno. The Fresno app, or 311, is another way to keep you all safe, because sometimes when you leave the place unattended, whether it's your neighborhood, apartment, family, whichever place you live at, you want to make sure it's well maintained, not having graffiti, not having illegal dumping, cars left there. You want to make sure that everything's gone, because if someone thinks that that place is abandoned, or if they just think, hey, they don't even care here, that car's been there for a week, I can sell my drugs here, I can do anything I want here. Use the Fresno app, report it. You guys report it, that team is actually very fast. They will come and take care of all those, the trash, the debris, the graffiti gets done. This actually is one of the city's biggest things, that they have a team respond between 12 and 36 hours. So being that they do it that fast means that they really want to see the city change. So 311 or Fresno, that's the biggest thing. I will leave with Nancy, because she's one of my key representatives here that I've maintained contact with. I will provide her copies of this, just all the tips, so that it can get passed out to everybody. I'll just need the exact number that she'll need, and then what languages, so we can make sure we can try to get those numbers taken care of for everybody. But please report it. As LT said, he's in charge of the patrols and the operations. If nothing gets called here, then that means everything is fine. If you assume that the next person is going to call it in and do not call it, that call's not made. Our dispatchers do a great job of getting that information, and if it's a second call, they'll just say, you know what, we got that call already. Do you have anything else you can offer, or is there any new details that you may have? And if you don't, then you just be honest and say, you know, I just wanted to make sure I called it in, but if someone already did, then thank you. And then that's it. If we don't have those calls for service, then we're going to assume that this church is doing A-OK, and we're going to make sure we're focusing, because this is the highest populated district in Fresno. Even though it's the smallest in area, we have the most people here. So we just want to make sure that everybody knows, please do not assume that someone else is going to call. Just call it in and make sure that that call gets set in there. If you don't want contact, if you don't want to look like, hey, I just called the police and they're going to come and talk to me afterwards, just let the dispatcher know, I would like to remain anonymous, or I do not need contact. Your caller ID already came in, so they have your phone number. They will not be calling you back unless they really have to. But it's up to you how you want to handle the contact afterwards. So just be mindful of that, because some people, they come into our office that next day and saying, nobody showed up and talked to me. And when we look at the call, there's nothing there saying that they asked for that. So I just want to let you all know that that's one of the things. If you do want the contact, you got to make sure you let them know. Same with if you don't. And lastly, I'm going to have vehicle tips presented to you by Miss Trinity. She's going to be one of our future officers here, so we're very excited about where she's at in her career as a cadet. So I'll let her finish it up, and then if there are any questions, we'll definitely open the floor up for that.
Thank you, Danny. So as Danny was saying, I'm a cadet. I've been a cadet for, oh, that's better? Okay. So I'm a cadet. I've been a cadet for almost 2 years now. I've been enjoying the experience. It's really nice to work along officers and Danny, especially Danny, because I get to go meet a lot of people. So as a cadet, I'm a field cadet, so I go to non-emergency calls, and I believe these vehicle burglary and theft tips are very essential, especially because I see it so frequently. The first tip is to make sure you lock your vehicle and check to make sure it's locked. So it's good if you have a little key with a little lock on it, check it. You can like wiggle the doors, make sure it's locked. Because sometimes, even with my car, it doesn't lock if I just click it. So I'd have to go back and check again. If you have any valuables, keep it out of view. So like make sure it's not, if someone looks in the window, they don't see it on the seat or on the floor. You could put it underneath the seat, preferably in your trunk, because like no one can see anything in your trunk, in your glove compartments, even your change. I've known, you know, some people break windows out just to get the quarters. So just make sure everything's placed away, out of plain view. Don't leave your phone chargers, GPS, garage remotes, or any, like I said, loose change in plain view, because especially those chargers, if it's an iPhone, they will take it. Attempt to park in a well-lit area or close to your destination. So make sure there's a whole bunch of lights around. Even if there's people around, it's a very busy area. That's very, it can help you as well, especially because they can notice if someone's just walking around the parking lot or even the neighborhood, they can notice suspicious activities. If you're in a parking lot like Walmart or something, closer to park, especially at nighttime, you don't want to be walking so far by yourself if there's no one out there. And you just come up to your car and someone's in your car, or you have a broken window and you're like, what's going on? You know, that can be very frightening. Avoid parking areas that are dark. So, like I said, like dark, right? Always watch your surroundings, especially if you're alone. Before you approach your car, look, see who's around you, what's around you. You don't want to park like in corners where no one can see you, or like there's trees, or there's areas where it just looks like it's isolated. You don't want to park next to that, especially like trash cans or anything, but that's nasty, so you don't want to do that. Once you get in the car, I always immediately lock my car. So as soon as I get in there, I lock it, then I start doing whatever I need to do. As you're walking to your car, don't be on your phones. I broke that habit because I used to do that a lot. Remember, don't give anyone an opportunity to make you a victim. So just be aware, be conscious, just be alert. Especially if you have a Hyundai and a Kia, those are very, a lot of vehicles that love to get attacked because they've learned this new system called the Kia Boys, where they can just break into your car and joyride them and just dump them anywhere. So if you do have a Hyundai or a Kia, you can come to any district, especially Central, and get a wheel lock. We provide them for you for free, so you can just put them on your wheel. So if they try to steal your car, they can't get nowhere because now you have safety. Oh, right here. Oh, that's loud. There you go. Is that better now? Okay, there you go. So yeah, you can get a wheel lock at the Central Station or any station in Fresno. They'll provide it to you for free if you have a Hyundai or a Kia or any vehicle if you like as well. I have one for my Honda, even though it's not a Hyundai, it's still a Honda, and it still works. It's essential. So yeah, the key takeaways is make sure your vehicle is locked before you leave. Don't go around any areas that's dark. Make sure it has people surrounded. There's light, it's close to your destination, be aware, and just be safe when you're leaving or going to your car. So I hope that's helpful. Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, here you go.
Well, I think I was blessed by these tips, and as the officer mentioned, if you have questions now, it's your turn. We're going to have a microphone being brought to you. There's one here, so I have a microphone. I'm going to just give this microphone to Elias while Mark is coming.
Lieutenant Guzman, Trinity, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. Question. I take off for the weekend to see my mom. I come back and I find people living in my home. What kind of evidence can I present to the officers so that they can take action versus them telling me, I'm sorry, sir, we can't do anything. This now has to go to court, and you have to address this with a judge.
Lieutenant.
Okay, I'll try to answer this, but I'll preface it by saying that I may not be able to answer it to your satisfaction. This is a tricky area. I'll tell you what the criminal statute says. The criminal statute says if someone is at your home and they do not have a right to be there. In other words, they're not a resident in the eyes of a contract of tenancy. They're not renting. They don't have a lease agreement. They're not on title to your home, right? And you tell them you're no longer welcome here, you need to leave. That is up to the individual who has the right to exercise authority in their home over who stays and who leaves. If they protest and say, I'm not leaving, we get called typically, and we have to spend a few minutes to investigate, find out whose house is this. And this applies to businesses as well, but I'm using the example of a home. Or it could be an apartment that someone's renting and say, I'm on the lease, this is my apartment, and he's no longer welcome to stay here. I've told him to leave. Then the police, after they determine that, based on interview, getting all sides of the story, the police can then arrest the individual for refusal to leave, which is a trespass, okay? But again, this is a tricky area of the law, or it can be when the question of whose residence is this, who has the authority there, is not clear. And sometimes it's not clear. If they're family members, well, let's say they're siblings, for instance, and one makes a claim, well, parents passed the home down to us. My brother and I have been living here for 10 years after mom and dad passed, and it's just as much my house as my sibling's house. I'm not leaving. Well, then, oftentimes we don't have the tools to do the research, right? And it becomes what you referenced. It could be a civil matter, which would require going to court, presenting the evidence of who's on title, right? And who belongs there. So I've run across this issue many times over the years. I've had married couples that are divorced, and then one comes to mind, the husband comes in and says, it's my house, I'm moving back in. This can get sticky, right? But we try to get cooperation. Our last resort is enforcement. We're not hesitant to make an arrest in a violent crime situation or what have you, but in issues like this, we're trying to be peacemakers. We're trying to help get people to cooperate. We try to become excellent communicators and negotiators with people to get their cooperation and say, well, it's really unfortunate. We try to be empathetic and listen, because, everyone has their point of view, and say, well, sometimes I've used the strategy of Can you find another place? Would you please cooperate to keep peace? Can you find another place to stay for the night? And, do you have an attorney you can, contact, and so forth? So I don't know if that answers your question, because it's not cut and dried. It depends, is the answer.
So you're a homeowner, you're going away for the weekend.
Right.
What would you do with your officer background to ensure that when you come back and you find an unwanted person, make them home out of your place?
Right.
What would you do so that when officers arrive, they can take action?
Right. Well, that seems like a pretty clear case to me. If it's your home and they don't live there and they just moved in, they're squatters, again, we have a legal advisor. Ultimately, if there was a question, because what is their claim? You haven't presented what their claim is. They're going to obviously they're going to say, no, this is I belong here. I'm renting the place. Right.
I saw this on Craigslist, and here's my lease.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, that could be a fraud, right? It could be a fraud for sure. So in that case, I would probably, if I couldn't figure it out, on scene right there, I would call the legal advisor and say, this is what I'm inclined to do. I think we should make an arrest. What do you say? And again,
Gotcha.
it can become tricky. But we've had cases like that in the city where people have also real estate for sale. Someone moves in, you have a lawful owner,
Yeah.
but it's unoccupied, and someone moves in and says, I'm renting this place. This is my place. They're lying.
Sure.
We've had those, and they're frauds is what they are.
Tips for us if we're going to go away for a weekend?
Well, a tip, I'd say some that Officer Guzman mentioned, the security cameras, that would show, right? Because how do they gain entry into the house in your scenario?
Okay.
Right? How do they get into the house? Right? Do they have to force entry?
Gotcha.
Or unless they come up with a key. I mean, it'd be nice to have that evidence. You say, well, how did you gain access to the house?
Okay.
We're pretty, now there are some pretty skilled scammers, right? Criminals, people who commit frauds, including real estate. And there's people, I know real estate owners that have had disputes over title, people have stolen title, which is more of a paper crime, right? And then have to fight to demonstrate that they're the lawful owner, not the person who's representing themselves as the lawful owner. So again, these things can become tricky when it comes to real estate. But a standard, you go away for vacation or the weekend, you come back and squatters in your home, that seems to me, that's a very unusual case, but it would be relatively straightforward, I believe, to demonstrate that as an officer on scene and remove them from the house or make an arrest for trespass.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then also we're looking for any items. I mean, we're going to investigate the individuals, right?
Sure.
We're going to try to get their cooperation, find out, we're going to separate the parties and interview everyone involved and tell me your story. Why are you here? How long have you lived here?
Okay.
We can sniff that out pretty quickly
Good.
in most situations,
Good.
right? It would be the highly sophisticated, very unusual case where someone could, get past me or most police officers with a concocted story about this is really their home and not your home.
They put up grandma's pictures on the wall.
What's that?
They put up grandma's pictures on the
Right,
wall.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's like something out of a movie almost, right? I mean, because like I said, I think I've told some of you, or maybe in my intro, I've been in this role for a long time in police, as a police officer for over 30 years. I've never seen that exact scenario. It's more common that, because people don't think things through, it's more likely to have a family member or someone, they may not be dealing with issues rationally. They may be emotionally invested. There may be alcohol, drugs involved, so forth, delusions, mental health issues, health related.
Yes.
And they're demanding, this is my house, I'm not leaving the house. Or the mom gave me this house. Those types of things is what
Familial.
we come across. Yeah.
Thank you, officer.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just to add to that real quick, for anyone planning on I'm guessing cruise, like he would be going on a vacation that long, let your neighbor know that you're going out of town. Let your family know to check up on the house. With having someone go there constantly, no one's gonna know that you're gone. Or have timers set inside that your lights come on. Like when my dad goes out of town, he makes it look like there's a party every night. Now, once they find out that that's just a scam, he might be a victim one day, but it's just one of those things to just deter it. Having those automatic timers and having someone check on your place, that would also help minimize that too.
Thank you, Denny. And I wanted to mention one other thing I thought of when Officer Guzman and Trinity were speaking. One thing I've come across many times are, lovely people who come across me in my official capacity and they say something like, I saw this situation, but I didn't want to call because I know you're busy, meaning the police are busy. And I think how, it's very thoughtful of you to have that view, but it's not helpful to you if you see something out of place. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? We're doing a job. We get compensated to do the job. We're expected to work. You see something out of line, call us. That's what we're here for, right? We want to serve. I mean, that's what we're here for. And you folks are the eyes and ears. I call the police in my neighborhood. I'm not, a overly nosy neighbor, I don't think, in my own estimation. I don't try to get involved in everyone's business. But if I see a suspicious vehicle on my street or a person who's looks out of sorts, I take an interest and I call the police, and I say, hey, and I typically will call it in. I won't even identify myself as a member of the department unless something, that I know the dispatcher would need to know. And I say, hey, I'm an off-duty lieutenant. They may be familiar with me, they may not. It's a pretty big organization. And therefore, that helps sometimes the officers in the field because they know if I'm reporting it, then it's probably, they know that I have enough experience to make an observation that needs an officer response right now. But many times, crimes will happen like a burglary, and thankfully we catch the burglar because an interested neighbor, just like Officer Guzman said, I've seen this hundreds of times over my career. An interested neighbor says, they're on vacation, I know they're not home, and there's 3 guys with a pickup truck in their driveway and the garage door is open. That's not right. You know what I mean? And they will, some of these burglars and stuff, they will pose as, that's what I'd probably do if I was looking to go burglarize, right? Look like I'm doing some work, something legitimate, right? Put on some work clothes, look like I'm a contractor or whatever, right? So, take an interest, do not hesitate to call, and you're not bothering us, And if an officer ever came to me and said, well, why is this person calling it, they'd be in trouble, right? Because that's what we're here for, to serve, to, alleviate your fears. And if it's nothing, great. That's a win. If it turns, I've had many, a person call and say, well, I heard something in the backyard. I was afraid. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. It woke me up. I'm so sorry to call you. They apologize. I said, are you kidding me? I'm in their backyard at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said, man, I'm happy to be here to check for you, and then it turns out it's, hey, okay, great, you can go back to sleep, have a restful evening. That's what we're here for, so don't hesitate to call is my point.
Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, we have more questions here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A couple of questions on areas that you haven't touched on. When there's road hazards, do we call 911 or 311? When we see a road hazard, who do we call?
If you call, you don't want to call 911 unless you see it's a immediate road hazard. You would call the non-emergency line.
Which is what?
621-7000. Again, I'll get Nancy I made a little cheat sheet that will have this information there, and it breaks down like when to call 311, when to call the non-emergency line, and when to call 911. I also have like the Crime Stoppers tip line on there. I try to make it as easy as possible for everybody, but it just depends on the emergency that you have. Our dispatchers are very good at triaging the calls, that even if you accidentally call 911, they would say, well, this isn't technically an emergency, but we'll get a call in place and we'll get that fixed right away.
So just to follow up on that, and then another quick question. Let's say there's a couch on 180 right in the middle of the road and people are going to run into it. Who comes out and investigates? Is the police, the sheriff, or who comes out and removes that road hazard?
Yeah, so again, when you call dispatch, if it's something that belongs to either Fresno Sheriff or CHP or it is us, they'll make sure it gets routed to the appropriate agency. Or even just if it's not even a PD matter, they'll get the right agency to get that taken care of.
So the other question is, what about noisy neighbors that carry on to 2 o'clock in the morning, they won't stop making noise?
So you have to be willing to want to cite your neighbor for that noise complaint. So you have to be prepared to do the whole step of it. So if you call in that noise complaint, you have to also say, I want that contact because I will sign that citation. So you have to be prepared for that as well, because if you don't sign that citation, the officer will go there, they'll give them the chance to turn down the radio or music, but then what happens? They come back again because the music's still playing. But you have to do your part as well, and that's one of the things that's missed, is that people don't do that citation, and then the neighbor doesn't even know anything, so it doesn't go anywhere. So you have to be willing to sign that citation of that noise complaint.
So I've called several times. I've never had anybody come to my house to sign a citation. I give them the address, I give my name and my address, and I said, these people are carrying on, and it's not even immediate neighbors. Maybe it's a block away that's making all kinds of noise.
Right, thank you for the question. I will talk with you, Pastor, offline about your specific address, and so I can take a deep dive and look at the calls for service, and I can hopefully serve you there. But for the rest of the group, these can be sticky issues. I've personally experienced this myself, you know, because like I mentioned, I live in this community. I raise a family in this community like you. So if I have a noisy neighbor, I want to put a stop to it. The ideal situation is everyone is reasonable. Your neighbors are loving and are open to communication, right? And so the ideal scenario is we have some familiarity where I can come over to my neighbor's house and say, hey, I'm Steve, I live 2 doors down. Could you please keep it down? I'm getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, realize you're having an evening, that's great, but if you could just please keep it down, I'd appreciate it. And they say, oh, sorry, you know, sure, we'll keep it down. But we know from experience that there are people, they do not buy into the social contract. They don't have any respect for their neighbor. They are downright hostile. They can become violent. I mean, it's awful. So that's what I mean. It can be a bad situation. So what happens is, in a case like yours, when we become aware that it's a problem, the local police district that you're living in the jurisdiction, so for instance, if you lived in this central policing district, someone on my team will become aware of it. It'll get routed to a team, and we're gonna manage that more like a long-term project as opposed to a one Friday night loud party. And we'll make contact, and we do. And we've had some of these that get prolonged. They go back and forth with the detective, the area problem-oriented policing officer. And so I've become familiar with people, victims like yourself, that of a loud nuisance party over and over, and I've had to make contact, or our team has. And usually after a while, the situation gets resolved through enforcement, like Danny said, through a citation, or through other action. I've even seen people go civil court over it. But they can become a problem. The law is, the nuisance is a municipal code violation, a city law, not a state law. So the peace disturbance is a city code violation, which an officer can enforce, but it's a citizen's arrest, meaning the neighbor who's grieved doesn't have to physically make an arrest, but they have to be willing to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll sign that citation. Officers make contact, and our operating posture on that is like everything else. We use the lowest form of enforcement starting out, you know, and we can always ramp things up. So we make contact without disclosing the reporting party, the person who called us, and we say, hey, we're getting calls of a loud party here. Can you guys keep it down? And then we, depending on their response, I've had people that have been wonderful. Oh yeah, hey, I'm sorry. You know, it won't happen again, officer. They tone it down, and we wait and watch, and then we leave, and it settles down. And of course, I've had the other scenario, which some of you have seen, where, you know, they slam the door in our face, they crank it up louder, they start throwing bottles, alcohol bottles at us and so forth, right? And trying to terrorize the police and the neighborhood, you know? So it depends, but those can become longer term situations that we work on. And so I'll discuss with you offline and get your information so we can address it.
What time are neighbors supposed to be quiet? Isn't that 1 o'clock?
Right, there's not really a bright line rule. It's a common sense guide. A peace disturbance can be at any time, you know, 24-hour clock, basically. We try to say, well, after 10 o'clock at night, right? But these can become problems. I had a personal experience with this as a citizen, with a family member that had a nasty neighbor. Same thing, loud parties all night long. My relative is trying to go to bed to get up at 4 a.m. And in fact, the police do respond because there was 3 or 4 other callers. And my relative didn't even call, although she has called before. On this one case instance, she didn't. Other people called in because this guy is such a problem. The police responded, took the approach that I described, tried to get cooperation, and that neighbor went over to my relative's house, pounding on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning, screaming, cussing, making threats to kill her, all this other stuff, accusing her of calling the police, and she didn't. However, that's a problem. Come over to her house and do that. She was a single female living alone, 2 o'clock in the morning, terrified her. So we addressed that issue with him. But so, we're very familiar with these types of people that are just being vicious for no reason. A lot of times they're alcohol or they're just nasty people. So, we deal with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, thank you guys for coming out here. Really appreciate it. And thank you for being out there and dealing with people that we'd rather not deal with, because I watch a lot of police activity videos, body cam footage, and I really don't know how you guys can stand it. I really praise you for your patience and for your commitment. And now I've forgotten all my questions. I've lived here 61 years, so I know a little bit about Fresno, and it's not as nice as it used to be, but it's still not as bad as I know it could be, because a lot of other cities are having major problems. So I'm wondering, I don't know the scope of this, but I'm wondering, the immigration that's coming in to the United States, other cities are inundated, and I see a little bit going on here, but it's really hard to tell, what are we supposed to do when we're confronted with what some other cities are being confronted with gang activity, or maybe not gangs per se, but with just overwhelming odds where people are doing things. How is the self-defense attitude in Fresno? How is the Fresno PD looking at our ability to be able to protect ourselves and defend ourselves in light of overwhelming odds? Because sometimes things are really not good.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Everything comes down to a case-by-case basis. They're all fact-dependent. So I'll give you some general guidelines. We have to go by the law, and the law basically states that an individual has the right to protect themselves against fear of injury, serious bodily injury, or death. But when it comes down to a situation like that, the individual defending themselves is going to have to justify that. They're going to have to demonstrate that the person that created the threat had the means and the capability to carry out that threat they perceived. And that's why I say it's fact dependent. We had a case last night here in Fresno in this particular area, meaning in the central policing district, where, I take that back, it was the southeast policing district. But anyway, I was just researching this case from last night, where an individual showed up at a man's home in front of the house and started smashing car windows with a hammer. And this man is in his house with his family, including a newborn, and they're looking outside. The man who's wielding the hammer, smashing windows, is shouting. He moves to the front door of the house, and he's screaming at the occupants, demanding that they come out of the house so he can kill them, right? So the family's in fear. The husband in the home, the adult there, is in fear because he took this man at his word that he's trying to harm them, and he's pounding on the door with a hammer trying to break into the house. And at that point, the man inside retrieved a handgun, which he lawfully owned and possessed inside his home, and he shot around through the door, striking the man with a hammer, and that convinced him to get off the doorstep and leave. And then we arrived and arrested that individual. We got him medical aid, and then we ended up arresting him, and he's under arrest for attempted assault with a deadly weapon, vandalism, and making criminal threats to kill people, right? So in that case, you can see it's fact dependent. This man was able to articulate why he was fearful. In that scenario, would you think that the man had the means and the intent to harm or kill you or your family member, right, based on his behavior? Was he armed? Yes, right? So it's a common sense approach within the parameters of the law that are going to guide us. With respect to immigration, that's not an issue that we really are analyzing. And our approach to that is we serve everyone in the community, regardless of their residency status as far as citizenship and so forth. I don't even think about it. When I'm serving someone in the community, whether they're a victim or a suspect in a case, I'm not even getting into it, whether they're here legally, illegally, it doesn't matter because that's not our area. And we know that if people are fearful of being found out they're illegals, that they're gonna avoid reporting things to us like robberies or sexual assaults or a lot of other things. So we serve everybody. We let the immigration folks work through that. We cooperate with the law always. We're always going to cooperate with law and law enforcement. So those issues typically will come up if someone's in custody, going into the jails and so forth, or through courts, right? So it gets found out a little further downstream than the police, if that makes sense to you.
Well, I guess what I'm really trying to get at is not so much the legality of their being here or not, but the fact that the quantity of numbers, you know, the number of people that, you know, if they ship 10,000 people in a month or two, you guys are going to be overwhelmed. How is this going to work? Is Fresno PD looking at that, really looking at that, and trying to figure out with the mayor and all that?
To my knowledge, we have not experienced that in Fresno in recent times. I know that just from what I've seen in some national coverage, and some communities are dealing with those issues, but we haven't had a big influx of population spikes to my knowledge. Okay. The city's been a pretty steady growth rate over the 26 years I've been here in the city. Pretty steady growth rate, but we haven't seen big, huge spikes, big, huge influx of groups of people, including any immigrants that I'm aware of, right?
Okay.
So if that helps.
Yeah.
And then in terms of gangs and stuff, I mean, it's the oldest story around in a way, in my mind, which is gangs, they are mostly male young men who are looking for trouble, and they're going to use violence and they use weapons. So it's kind of the same old story to me, you know. They're menacing, they're trying to intimidate people and do things by force, you know. I don't respect that behavior, and we hold them accountable, and I've got a long history of working gang enforcement as well, so I'm familiar with a lot of the gangs. I was our Magic Metro commander of our gang task force here in Fresno for several years, and so I'm familiar with all that stuff. But yeah, it's the same old story. Young men with guns that are looking for trouble, you know, not good.
Thank you. Sex trafficking. What areas in Fresno should parents be more vigilant with their little daughters walking home from school or walking to their friend's house? Is this something that's trending in the city of Fresno, or this kind of thing does not happen?
Right. Well, I can tell you that there is not a specific geography where it's concentrated. My recommendation would be very involved in protecting your children and making them aware of the dangers and the frightening situation we have today that I've seen is people have access to children today that in past generations and when I was growing up, they didn't have access, right? But someone today can reach into your child's world through the mobile devices, right? And have immediate access and develop a relationship and have access to them. And we had a case that I worked earlier in the year with a 12-year-old girl here in Fresno. Nice neighborhood, higher economic status in terms of quiet, low incidence of violent crime or sexual assaults or any of that sort of stuff. But a pedophile, you know, was communicating with her through a social media app on her phone. And she developed a relationship. She told her grandparents who were watching her, hey, I'm gonna go for a walk And they said, okay, but they're taking interest in what she's doing, where she's going, and time limits and so forth. And so they were paying attention, and she left, and she was gone for a while. And they had GPS on her phone as well. And where is she at? They sent a message. She didn't reply right away. They looked, and they saw her on GPS somewhere. So the grandfather got in a car, drove the neighborhood, and she was only about a mile away. She had just been picked up by a pedophile from Oregon who picked her up in a pickup truck, swept right up and hopped in a car. The grandfather was following the vehicle, calling 911, and thankfully officers arrived on scene, and we detained the male, recovered the 12-year-old, and that male was already in the process of trying to sexually assault her. We got him in custody, and he's got a history of abusing kids, and he's a sexual offender. He's lived in Fresno and in Oregon. I don't know if he made the trip from Oregon, but that was my question. Did he come all the way down? Because he'd been communicating with her for a couple days, and they will do that. You guys have seen in the news that people like this they'll travel great distances. They'll take a flight, or they'll drive a car, or they'll go to your town if they make a relationship with a vulnerable victim. And I would say that any child is vulnerable because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the wisdom that we've had over the years. So they don't realize, because a person that's going to do harm is not going to present themselves as someone who's doing harm, right, until they have that opportunity. So they're going to befriend them, they're going to be there, they're going to flatter them, right, they're going to buy them things, they're going to try to cultivate and groom them. So I'd say be very involved, and just be aware that I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but be aware that it happens in any neighborhood, because today, they're not snapping up a kid from leaving soccer practice. They're reaching out on Snapchat, Instagram, these types of platforms to these 12, 13-year-olds and building relationships with them.
Do you have an idea of numbers in this year, 2024, of attempted abductions that have not been resolved?
I don't have that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Here in our...
It does. In my experience, stranger abductions do happen, but they're rare. They really are. We see them in the news, we see them nationally, and they're tragic. They happen. But in my experience, they are rare. To have a child literally snapped up off the street, by a stranger. They do happen, of course, but they are rare. They're not a normal occurrence, even for sexual offenders. It's more likely that someone close that has access to a child is going to offend than a stranger.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Cano. I am deaf, here with my friends, and I have seen some things now with us being deaf. Of course, when the cops do come to our homes or interact with us in the community, they need to have a sign language interpreter. So no matter what the situation is, because things get bad, and even if it's just a regular traffic accident, it's his word against hers. And of course, we're concerned about that. And then now here at church as well, being deaf, what about active shooters in the church? Isn't that what you're here for today?
Right. Yeah, I made reference to, I know that Officer Guzman is facilitating some training coming up. Right. Right. Yes. It's in the works. Right.
Training is coming.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I have a question. I work at a thrift store where we give snacks out to the homeless and stuff like that. And sometimes they come in and they tell us, or they tell me, that the police came and just took everything away from them and they have nothing, no clothes or anything like that. Why don't you let them take their clothes with them when you do the sweeps of the homeless camps and stuff like that?
So it's not us that do that, it's the HEART team, it's the homeless task force. But what happens is this, I've been on a few operations with them, so I see exactly what the whole process is from start to end. They first offer resources when they make that contact with that unhoused individual. They ask them if they need a place to stay. They give them 2 or 3 options of where to go. they're already in the wrong place because it's been called that they were doing something as an encampment where they shouldn't have been. So they offer them 2 or 3 different resources of where to go. Once that's denied, then they tell them that they need to take everything and they're going to have to leave that area. They don't take anything at all. Whatever's left behind, they then tell them, whatever's left behind, we will be putting in the back of this truck and we will not be storing it, we will just be dumping it. So anything that is thrown away is because it was left behind because that person or individuals didn't have the means to take it with them. And ultimately, the ones that you do see in the street are because they're choosing to do so, to be on the street. Because that's the first thing, and we just had a meeting in Tower District, and the city council, Council Perea, she said that right now 6% of people are offering those services. We have pretty much, she said, I believe 15% vacancy of the rooms and the places that are available, but it's a very hard sell. So the people that don't want to be there, they don't want to be sober or drug-free, or they have pets. So there's 2 or 3 different reasons why they can't go, and they're just flat out choosing to stay on the street. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I have a,
Oh, there he is. There's a question there.
I have a question.
We'll come back.
So I'm just curious how things have been in Fresno. So I know I've heard stories or things online about other cities where both the population and the administration has kind of turned against the police to a degree, where it's become very difficult to do law enforcement. Have you noticed a change in Fresno over the past 5 years in their attitude towards law enforcement? Or do you still feel like you have quite a bit of support, both from the population as well as from the administration of the city?
We became the highest paid department in the valley, so the relationship's actually really good with city council. Every event that I've done in the last 2 years of doing this job, in this specific role, the city council supports us. And if you go on each of their district pages for District 1, and this is actually District 7, Nelson Esparza, you'll see there's quite a bit of interaction and events that they're doing with us. So really, we have a lot of support of our council. That's really positive, which keeps on growing, because if you look up and down the state of California, we're pretty much at the highest volume of being staffed fully as a department. And it's the highest numbers we've ever had as a department. So it's really trending towards the right direction.
I have a question on the wheel locking device that you were describing, Trinity. How does it actually work? I'm just thinking to myself, somebody's going to their car and they're going to unlock the wheel, and they spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get the mechanism to get free, and then they got clonked on the head while they're trying to unlock their wheel. How does it actually work?
Do you know? Okay, so I'll answer that, because those steering wheel locks came out probably before she was born. They were those red clubs. So you guys remember them as the club, if you recall. But if someone wants your car, they're ultimately going to take it, even if that steering wheel lock is on there. But it is a deterrent. It's similar to just what I was saying of locking your house and everything. You see it locked. Do you really want to spend time on that one, or do you want to go to the car that doesn't have the lock, the steering wheel lock? So we have them. They're for free. It's at our station, and then every other district's also giving them out as well. So it's just a matter of having that deterrent. But ultimately, there is nothing that prevents anyone from, if they really want it, they're going to get it. But it is a deterrent. Well, it's a steering wheel boot, if you want to look at it that way. Yes, sir.
Hi, first of all, thank you for your service. I am a patriot, as big a patriot as anybody, but on the 4th of July, those fireworks are going off incessantly, and I have a dog that just, she's so squeamish now. She can't, she's just misbehaving, very timid now. And I was wondering what's the ordinance in Fresno? I thought it was supposed to be like some kind of crackdown on fireworks, but I mean, they're just going off for days before and days after. Is there anything that you can do?
That's a good question, and what we'll do is we'll wrap this up with that last question, and then we can plan on doing another type of meeting like this for everybody at another time, or even include it with our active shooter training that me and Nancy are going to work on. Now with fireworks, this is not a rule just for 4th of July. This is a year-round practice that the fire department has, and they gave us that information that you need to know the exact house it's coming from, or you're really just wasting your time. Because if you just say there's fireworks, and then the dispatcher says, do you know what location they're at? And you say, I don't know. Well, the call's in there for fireworks, but if you don't know, it's kind of just a goose chase, and we don't have the resources to just follow that. But they need to know the exact house, and that's where they actually are able to send the fire detective team to also go out there and cite them as well. But Lieutenant's going to have some other information for that.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, and a little further comment on the fireworks. Fireworks are a major issue. They are against the law if they're not safe and sane fireworks. I don't know all the nuances of those because I don't work specifically on the fireworks, but we do have experts that do, and they're with the fire department, and they team up with the police department. So every 4th of July, we have teams that are out literally looking for unsafe fireworks and confiscating them and citing individuals. I can tell you some of my personal experience in operations. I was the field commander on 4th of July, like 3 4th of Julys in a row. And frankly, I was getting tired of it, working every 4th. I like to, barbecue and get in the pool with the kids and family like anybody else. But the reason I was tired of it is because it's hot and it's a busy day for the police department. So I'm thinking back to a couple of them. And these are recent times now. I'm talking within the last 5 years or so. I was working one 4th of July. I had like 4 shootings all in a period of, in different neighborhoods, but relatively close proximity. And we're resource overwhelmed. I had a child drown in a pool at the same time. I mean, it's like fires are everywhere, right? As far as horrible, violent crimes and stuff. Resource scarce. And I remember driving on the 180, going up the ramp, and I'm looking, and it's getting dark, and it looked like a war zone with the fireworks. It was mind-blowing, the amount, just the sheer volume of the cascading, stuff and the booms and stuff. I mean, it's like ridiculous. So my heart's with you. We're overwhelmed with the amount of that fireworks that goes on, plus the other violent crime that we're dealing with as police. So what we do, again, it's a big priority for the fire department because the threat is fire as well. And we team up our police officers with them, and they have a special duty. We even pay some overtime, I think, for extra personnel to be addressed just on those issues. And we do it by geography in each police district. So we have multiple teams working, and I guarantee you they're only getting a little tip of it, right? They're getting a piece of it, but there's just so much more. And it's overwhelming. If any of you have enjoyed New Year's Eve, I've worked many a New Year's Eve, and I'm always amazed at the amount of gunfire. I mean, it's unacceptable. It's against the law. It's dangerous. I've seen bullets go through houses many times. We put out the message to everybody in the community every year, do not shoot off guns at midnight, right? But yet, if you listen, and I've recorded it, you go almost anywhere in the city, we have our people getting under some shelter right at the midnight, and they start shooting early, and they keep pounding off rounds, and you can hear some of the weapons that are out there, just the report of the weapons, and it's frightening. Oh man, it's overwhelming how many. I understand a few troublemakers, but I mean, there's a lot of them out there, right, doing that stuff. So it's unfortunate. That's the reality of it. So we do address it, we do enforce it, but it can become a big monster on the 4th of July. I don't know why people do it.
So I really want to say thank you to everybody for the hospitality. I love the Q&A session as well. The interaction was amazing. If there's anything that was not covered and a little bit sensitive to maybe bring up because of obviously a public setting, I will personally let everybody know, please let Nancy get my email from her. She has it. Email me. If I don't have the answer, as you see, my chain of command supports me tremendously. If they won't ever just let me just say, I don't know, and then that's it. I will make sure I get you guys those answers, but please send me an email, ask those questions, even if it's just trying to know what's the right thing to do. Let's at least start that way and get that going, and then we'll do another meeting, and then I can also bring those back up and say, hey, this is the answer to that, or you know what, I'll answer right away and say, this is the answer to that. I won't wait for a meeting. So really just be mindful of that. If there's any questions that you guys may have, or something that just wasn't answered, but you want an answer from it, Nancy has my email. She contacts with me frequently. And I care about this community. I care about your neighbors right here. And we do care about the people that are in the park. We want to see them in a better place because it doesn't help anybody for them to be in that situation. It's not a good look either, but you know, we care about their welfare as well. So we just want to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And you know, when they do have this park restructured, that will take care of the problem for a little bit, but you know what, that park's not going to be rebuilt forever. So we'll experience that again as it happens. But I do want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for this, and I'll let LT close it as well if he has anything.
Yeah, again, just wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for your support and your prayers, and looking forward to building relationships with you moving forward.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Yes. We want to praise God for your service. We want to thank you for being here, for giving of your time. We want to thank you for accepting the challenge and the calling that you have accepted. You put your lives on the line for us, and we are very grateful to God for you. So with that, I would like to ask David, one of our elders, who could maybe offer a prayer so we can end this program with the hope that we will see you again soon.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Father in heaven, again, we thank you so much for your love and your kindness. We thank you for giving people a desire to serve, and we thank you that you've given people the bravery to go out and do a job that is extremely difficult. We so much appreciate the work that they do, and we thank you. We ask especially that you would protect them, protect the entire police force. They have such a hard job. So we ask that as we head out, that your hand of protection would be over us all. May we be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Thank you for hearing us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.